Um, we have Trump, Biden, and America's destiny, but we're about to face some serious consequences. But how bad could that all be? Now, for Republicans in D.C., the endless division is fun and games, but that isn't what Americans want. Now, the Biden administration learned the hard way last week that we cannot trust Saudi Arabia. Along with other OPEC nations, the desert monarchy cut oil production, virtually ensuring an increase in gas prices just before the upcoming November election. Now the words puppets for Putin never rang more true. Now there isn't much of a positive nature that you can expect from a country that was complicit at the very least in the murder and dismemberment of a Washington Post columnist, and that they had a hand in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. There will be consequences. Biden warned in an exclusive interview. We just don't know what those consequences will be yet. The consequences are a leading theme as we cruise into the midterm elections. Leading economic indicators show that the world is slipping into a recession. In the Atlantic this week, Norman Ornstein had underscored the bottom line for American voters should the Republicans prevail this fall and take control of Congress, which I hope not. It's not just a move toward authoritarianism, but Ornstein points to the fact that the Republicans would likely and eagerly crash the whole economic and political system. The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, had broke down the differences between Democrats and Republicans. When it comes to consequences from her podium this week in the Brady briefing room, the Democrats, we hold the Democrats accountable. She said, but when a maggot Republican says something racist or anti-Semitic, they are embraced. In the midst of the fall follies during the run-up to the election, Joe Biden is on the road again, trying to make a living and doing the best that he can. My apologies to the Allman Brothers there, making that reference. Uncle Joe ain't moving so slow and has joined his fellow Democrats in a crusade across the country to sell the idea of a self-government while members of the GOP are pulling their hair out and screaming about lizard aliens harvesting children for God only knows what the fuck else and any fictional ends. Now think about the consequences here. Now for some reason the results of the midterm election remains in doubt. Election deniers now dominate the Republican Party, and they will cause all kinds of torture to election officials no matter what the turnout is. And that's what a scorpion does. Of course, the Democratic scorpion is the only one to ever stink its own back. So again, remember the consequences that we're facing. Many Democratic candidates see themselves as patriots holding the tide against rising fascism, while those election deniers and tribute candidates who believe Trump is a post-modern shaman see themselves the same way. And you cannot have it both ways. The key is that many on the far right see themselves as fictional heroes and the simplistic soup inside their head. The fact that anyone takes them seriously is a dire reflection on the electorate as a whole. Basically, Brian Kareem had thought about all this and more while walking up a dusty hill in a public park in Columbia, Missouri recently. A lack of rain has turned that part of the state into a fine ash-like powder that seems to be everywhere. It sticks to your clothes and your car, and it makes breathing difficult. He walked up to the hill, to an outdoor theater, to hear John Batiste sing Tell the Truth and make a plea for universal peace, and also perform the greatest rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner that Brian Kareem has ever heard. Batiste has said that human interaction during a live musical performance can basically uplift the humanity in the midst of the plug-in and tune out nature of a modern society. He proved it that night, and he gave an insight into the consequences that we're all facing. As it turns out, human interaction is not just for music, but it makes a big difference in dealing with people. It's something that we did during the pandemic, and also the consequences of that are being felt today. The country remains a hyperkinetic wound, and it's rubbed raw by divisiveness and desperate for a laugh. Most people want very much for common sense to take over, even those who participate most in the insanity are a little out of sorts, and we saw a self-described Trumper declare he was tired of everyone claiming to be patriots, and he wanted to know, what the fuck are you going to do for us if we elect you? If you're elected Republican, they're not going to do shit for you. He declared this at a coffee shop in Fulton, Missouri, as several people around him had nodded their heads in agreement. Consequences. You cannot escape them no matter how much you want to, and you can't create reality from fiction without heavy consequences. Now, the longer you wait, the rougher those consequences are going to be. Mid-Missouri is suffering a drought, and there are consequences there. There's Missouri hot, and there's Missouri dry. Now, welcome to Missouri hot and dry. This is what was said at a truck stop with a little hint of sarcasm. The speaker said he was tired of strife, he was tired of the weather, and most definitely tired of fucking politics. Now, with that being said, there are fewer public displays of Republican lunacy in the mid Missouri part in the last few months. The greatest uprising against Republican lunacy came after January 6th hearing that showed Senator Josh Hawley, yes, of Missouri, doing his chariots of fire sprint through the Capitol on the day of the Klan insurrection. Now, even stalwart members of the GOP, nay, especially the most stalwarts, are beginning to understand that Hawley may have the potential for a healthy amount of adult growth, but certainly hasn't realized it, or any. Now, will he face consequences, or will he end up out of office and hired by a news network to be the voice of the loyal opposition? And there can be no consequences if those who promote extremism are given equal consideration alongside law-abiding citizens. And there can be no equal justice if it is not applied to any and all presidents. Now, the thunder rumbles in the background against the quiet countryside with the faint baying of hounds in response to the coyotes, and that's the only sound to be heard other than the wind and rain. After weeks of no rain, the mid-Missouri countryside picked up 1.5 inches on Tuesday, enough to bed down the dust, but not enough to relieve the ongoing drought. And this leads us to wonder if the Republicans are turned back in the fall, and the Democrats do retain control of one or both houses of Congress. Now, will it be enough to end the drought of decent government that we've experienced, or will it be just enough to bed down the dust while the drought remains? I continue to have hope here, but I realize that this is a long fight, but that won't be over soon, no matter what the outcome in November is. But we've had an epiphany of sorts, like Brian Kareem was in a Moser's grocery store at the north end of Fulton, and they advertised that they had the best cuts of meat, and he had to see for himself. He got sidetracked when he saw a woman in her mid-80s waving a walking stick in time to AC/DC's "It's a Long Way to the Top." When she got to "If You Want to Rock and Roll," she was somehow transformed. She told me it was her and her husband's song, and the favorite song of her second husband, whom she loved and cherished and recently lost after 40 years. Hotel Motel makes you want to cry, but it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. Now, if seeing a woman over 80 dancing to AC/DC while rattling her cane won't restore your faith in humanity, I don't know what the fuck will. But it's hard to see at this point whether we are going to face the consequences now or later for the mistakes that we made in this country. Take a walk through the mid-Missouri countryside, if you can, and clear your head. The ghosts are hard to shake, but the arrowheads found in the ground along a nearby creek and the Civil War buns from the uniforms of the North and South speak of the savagery of our recent past, and they're easy to find in any cornfield. Now, the signs like "Let's Go Brandon" and "Trump is my visible ferryman God," signs that you saw along the country roads of mid-Missouri even a few months ago, speak to the savagery of the present. The relative absence in mid-October, a few weeks before the midterm election, speaks perhaps to the growing realization that there are consequences for all this discord that most Americans don't want to face, including a total government upheaval on a scale not seen since the Civil War. There's always consequences, and seldom do we wish to face the worst of them, even if we're responsible for them. Now, the fat fuck Alex Jones doesn't have $965 million to pay for the consequences of his misdeeds, and Vladimir Putin doesn't want to face the consequences of an illegal war that he started as a monument to his own ego, and Donald Trump doesn't want to face consequences for a lifetime of ripping off the citizens of the planet. And Americans don't want to face the consequences of the people who we voted into office, but there it is. We have to do so. Our one last tale of consequences. Now, sitting at Cooper's Landing this week, Brian Kareem was at a Riverside Diner, a pub and music venue on the Missouri River, and he witnessed a beautiful thing. Two obvious Trumpers, the maggot hats gave it away, were sitting with two people who obviously were not. They spoke about the last few years, COVID, Trump, the threat of nuclear war in Ukraine, and the general state of the world and how we're witnessing it. And they embraced each other. One said to the other, if you have to explain to me that you're woke, then you're fucking not. And the other said, if you claim you're a Trump sycophant and you're not a patriot. They laughed in their shirts and suds and listened to a pretty good rendition of Wild Night by Van Morrison. Now, the consequences of our actions are things that we seldom wish to face, but we're eager to slide on past them. Next month's election won't let us do that. Now, the echoes of our past problems and the ghosts of strife from the past, the injustice, the racism, misogyny, and vitriol are all crying to us across time to settle our differences and move forward as one nation. Now, there are those in Congress, including, but they're not limited to, Jim Jordan, Moscow Mitch, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Louis Gohmert, and Lauren Boebert, and they all want to benefit from avoiding any consequences for their actions. But I'm not sure that they're in a lockstep with the Americans outside that DC bubble. Now, out here, I see people who understand consequences. Whether or not those consequences are felt in DC is up to the January 6th committee, Congress, the current President Biden, and the voters. Whatever the voters say in a few short weeks, there will be consequences that we cannot avoid and cannot delay, and the reckoning is upon us. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.